Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining us on the Deserts to Mountaintops podcast. I am your host, Jess Buchanan. I'm also the founder of Soul Speak Press, which is a boutique, non-traditional publishing company for women who've been through something. Now they know something and they want to teach us something. I am very excited to be joined here today with another contributing author to our second volume, our second anthology, Deserts to Mountaintops, Choosing Our Healing Through Radical Self-Acceptance. Today I'm talking to Kim Osburn, and I'm super excited to be having this conversation. Kim, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
Yeah. So you are, you have such an interesting story. You have lots of interesting stories. And I feel like what you contributed to the anthology is just scratching the surface. But why don't you take us through your journey, really, like the desert to the mountaintop, recognizing that deserts can last for a very long time and they're not just one moment, and also that the mountaintop is not just one particular moment either. So however you'd like to interpret that.
Okay. Well, as far as my desert experience, just to give some background, as I described in the chapter, I was raised in a home that was raised in a Christian home. We attended a Presbyterian church. Um, my dad, in particular, had very heavy evangelical leaning,
Hmm.
and so he would take me to evangelical revivals as a child.
Hmm.
And
I remember those.
yeah,
I was raised very much the same way.
I remember this isn't in the book, but I remember one funny story. You know, with evangelicalism, it's very important to ask Jesus into your heart and get saved.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I remember when I was about, I think 4, my dad took me to a revival, and they had an altar call where children in particular were invited to
Mhm.
come down to the altar and invite Jesus into their heart. And so I told my dad, well, I don't know if he prompted me or I prompted him. I was 4, I don't remember. But we went down to the altar and knelt and prayed. And in my 4-year-old simplicity, I knelt down and I said, Jesus, come into my heart. Amen. And I pictured like this little teeny tiny Jesus
Yeah.
sitting on a little throne in my heart, and I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, we're done. Then I look over at my dad and he's like fervently praying and praying, and
Hmm.
looked over and there was an older lady next to me just fervently praying. And I'm like, guys, like, it's over. I did it.
It's
I'm
not that
done.
hard.
And I
Oh
think,
man.
I could go off on a commentary about how evangelicals complicate salvation more than it needs to be. I
Mm.
think
Well, I would love for you to do that sometime. Sounds like another
maybe not today.
anthology.
But yeah, but anyhow, yeah, just a funny anecdote. But in general, I also, our family has a history of mental
Hmm.
illness. Specific diagnoses include things like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
Looking back, I think there may have been some undiagnosed OCD in some
Mm.
folks, but I can't armchair diagnose people that have already passed away.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but in a nutshell, I grew up with um, severe undiagnosed OCD and didn't get a correct diagnosis until I was 45 years old.
Wow.
So my desert experience of having OCD was that I would get these intrusive thoughts. And in
Hmm.
hindsight, I went back and I gave those thoughts a name, disapproving Susan.
Yeah.
Susan, start talking to me. And it really I wasn't hallucinating, hearing an actual voice, although I would see a picture of a person in my head,
Hmm.
uh, oftentimes saying these things. But again, I knew it wasn't real. I knew it was just a picture intruding into my thoughts. But the earliest memories I have of Susan bothering me were at after one of these evangelical revivals, where I thought to myself, my mother, who did not attend church at that time for various reasons, um, I thought she was going to hell because
Hmm.
she didn't attend church, and it was my fault. because I was such a bad Christian witness.
Mm.
This was sometime in the age range of like 5, 7. Okay. And I mean, that's a heavy guilt trip for a
Oh,
7-year-old,
yeah.
a young child to have. And it
Yeah.
wasn't anything, I can honestly say it wasn't anything that any specific person put on me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was the combination of my evangelical teaching,
Mhm.
my childlike understanding, and
Mhm.
OCD,
Yeah.
because moral scrupulosity is it can be a very pervasive symptom of obsessive compulsive disorder.
Mhm.
And stereotypically, most people think of OCD as things we see in the media. People being germaphobes, people
Right.
washing their hands excessively, or
Right.
doing repetitive, very outward um, routines or rituals. For a lot of us with OCD, the rituals are all mental. That nobody sees us doing things to stave off these intrusive thoughts, fears. It's all in our heads, so to
Mhm.
speak. And I don't mean that like it's made up, but I mean
Right.
it. The rituals all happen internally, so nobody ever knows if you don't
Yeah.
tell them. You know, and for years I was afraid to tell anybody because I didn't want people to think I was literally hearing voices and diagnosed me with schizophrenia and put
Right.
me in an institution or something. You know
Right.
how it is.
Yeah.
So I just
You're
talk
just a
about it.
kid.
I was just a kid. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, but I dealt with these pervasive, intrusive thoughts mainly about religion at
Mhm.
that point. And then as I got into the tweens and teens and puberty years, um, as I started becoming naturally curious about sexuality and changing bodies and that sort of thing, um, and anytime I would have a sexual thought of any kind or a sexual feeling of any kind, Susan would start screaming at me, "That's a sin. That's a sin. You're going to hell. You need to repent." And I mean, just the weight of that in general was crushing, soul crushing. And then on top of that, I found myself dealing with or experiencing, I should say, some same-sex
Mhm.
sexual thoughts and feelings. And oh gosh, between my evangelical upbringing that taught me
Yeah.
homosexuality is an abomination, the
Yep.
Bible is clear, and the OCD with the scrupulosity, and then this sexual obsession component, it just tore me up.
Yeah.
And that was something I struggled with again for decades. Um, I did go on and ended up marrying a man. He's
Mhm.
still the love of my life.
Yeah.
Um, but I never, those thoughts and feelings, same-sex attraction were, you know. And so I wasn't sure what to do with that. And then Susan, once I got married, started chiming in, well, what if you cheat? What if you cheat on your husband? What if you're
Yeah.
like this horrible, awful person who's going to go find a girlfriend and cheat on your husband, and you're going to blow up your life because you're this terrible person? I believe gay people went to hell.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
all these decades of just guilt and inner anguish going
Mm.
on. And I couldn't tell anyone. I mean, I tried in certain ways to share with different people what was going on. I mentioned in the book that there was a Christian therapist that I was seeing on a regular basis, and I saw her for years before I even broached the subject of my sexual intrusive thoughts. And once I did, and I told her everything, she told me I needed to repent and told me that I was a sex addict,
Oh
and she
God.
prayed for me to try to cast demons out of me.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And I kept going back to her
This is
because
a medical health professional.
yeah, she was the expert, right?
Mm.
So that's what I believed about myself. I mean, now it was official. I had a diagnosis. I was a sex addict. I
Mm.
was demonically
Mm.
oppressed.
Mm.
So again, that just compounded the shame and the guilt, and that went on and on for years. Until finally I got to a point where the obsessive thoughts turned to obsessive or intrusive suicidal.
Mm.
And I mean, I had those off and on. Earlier in my life, I mentioned an incident where I was rejected by an evangelical church that I used to work for.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of my sexuality. I mean, God, no, we didn't go there. Okay. But just, it was just a general rejection. And those feelings of rejection compounded with the years of beratement from Susan, just ripped my soul to shreds. And I remember having these intrusive thoughts
Mm-hmm.
of severe self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could have gone off on I could have written another chapter about my experiences over the decades with the mental health industry and
Yeah.
misdiagnosis and mistreatment,
Yeah.
but I really just kind of passed through that, but, briefly mentioned it in my, but it wasn't until my suicidal thoughts got so out of control that I knew that I needed help. And my family, I kept reaching out to my family doctor because I was scared to go to a psychiatrist. Again, I didn't want to get diagnosed with
Mm-hmm.
schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And so I kept calling my family doctor, and she finally just sat down with me and my husband and let me know, look, you need to see a mental health specialist. You have a life-threatening condition, and I am not equipped to handle this life-threatening condition for you. You need to seek the help of a mental health professional. I swallowed my pride and I did that, and I finally got a correct diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this huge aha moment. Like,
Uh-huh.
the therapist was reading through the symptoms of OCD, and mind you, I had a master's degree in counseling. We had glossed over OCD. It was like one little blip in the curriculum. I didn't know. I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea. And so when she read these symptoms from the DSM, the Diagnostic and
Mm-hmm.
Statistical Manual of Mental Illness, it was like the person had written it about me. You
Wow.
know? And so it's like ding, 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 intrusive thoughts that are out of character for you, um, all kinds of different. And so gradually, as I began to trust her and began to open up to her, I opened up to her about my same-sex attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always had this polarized view of either I'm a God-pleasing straight person who's going to heaven, or I'm a hell-bound lesbian, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and like there was no in between. And someday, I can pretend to be straight, but then someday I'm going to snap and become a lesbian,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
As
like,
if
no,
that's so bad.
as if that's so bad. Yes, I want to clarify. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
This was what Susan was
Yeah.
saying to me.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Just to clarify.
I get it. I get it. But just
Yeah.
in case somebody's listening and they don't get it. Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Yeah. No. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that anymore. Susan was lying. She's a liar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but anyhow, the therapist said to me, well, I kind of shrugged her shoulders and said, maybe you're bisexual. And I was like, wait, what? That's an option? Like, I was so sheltered. I mean, I'd heard the term
Right.
bisexual, but like, I never thought about applying it to myself, you
Uh-huh.
know. And there can be this component of OCD that demands certainty.
Mm-hmm.
So that black or white, either
Mm-hmm.
I'm this or I'm that, and I got to figure it out because what if I'm wrong and I'm the other? You know.
Right.
Well, this opened up like this world of possibility in my mind. Like, what if I'm both straight and lesbian? Essentially, what if I have attraction to both genders? And what if that's
Yeah.
what if that's not so bad?
Right.
Because this was a religious therapist that was telling me this. And
Amazing.
he was an affirming person.
Uh-huh.
And so that just kind of opened up a world of possibilities to me in my mind that I might not be so awful after all. Maybe I'm just a normal person, like whatever
Yeah.
normal is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'm okay. But still, it took several years of therapy and getting on the right medications for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, to start to unpack all of that because there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of OCD's lies to undo and a lot of evangelical programming that
Yes.
was not really accurate to
Yeah.
undo,
Yeah.
And and so like even though I made some great strides during the next 3 years, there still was this conflict within me where this this thing where I just uh, the whole, even thinking, okay, well maybe I'm bisexual. Well, what if that's not okay? And what if that means I'm going to hell? Okay, that was like the last stronghold for me that was, in terms of OCD's grip on my brain and on
Mm-hmm.
my and I came to a point in 2018 where these my sexual thoughts and attractions and uh, the intrusive thoughts about whether or not I was pleasing to God became so pervasive that I finally thought to myself, I'm done. I
Yeah.
can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I was going to end my life
Mm.
and actually had the means in my hand to do it. Um, but then something inside me, whether it was the voice of God or just the voice of my own self compassion,
Mm.
said to me, would your husband rather have a bisexual wife or a dead wife? Would your son rather have a bisexual mom or a dead mom?
Mm-hmm.
And that just gripped me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, obviously they would want me to be alive,
Yeah.
because shame was such a big component to me. I thought, well, if I come out and admit that I'm bi, people are going to be ashamed of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it just started to sink into me that, well, maybe that's not true.
Yeah.
It dying is not the answer.
No.
Ending it all is not the answer. Your family loves you. Your
Mm-hmm.
family needs you. And yes, you need to face this, but it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to a dear friend who had been through, doesn't have OCD, but she had been through a similar uh, therapy outpatient treatment program that I had been. And so I reached out to her, and she just dropped everything and came, which was amazing.
Mm.
And just spent some time with me. And I don't remember how much we really talked about what was going on. I mean, I told her what had just happened, and but she just sat with me and
Mm.
comforted me. Talked with me about some of the skills we had learned in therapy that could help me get through this crisis
Mm-hmm.
period. And it was just so healing, you know. And from that point on, I embraced the idea that I was bisexual
Mm-hmm.
and that was okay. It didn't mean I was going to someday snap and throw away my marriage because I
Right.
love my husband,
Yeah.
you know. And I
Yeah.
mean, just like OCD just had me convinced that I was such a horrible, terrible,
Right.
and I'm not.
Yeah.
And over the next several years, I started to just internalize more and more. Not a terrible person. I'm a
Mm-mm.
child of the God that I was taught to believe in. That I still, not everybody who deconstructs still embraces faith at all, and that's okay. For me, I've at least found a place where I feel like God created me
Mm-hmm.
the way I am,
Yeah.
and that He loves me the way I am.
Yeah.
He doesn't love me in spite of who I am. He doesn't love me, but He demands that I change, or He's going to send me to hell for all eternity. No, no. He knows me. He created me, and He loves me just.
Mm. I love that. Wow. I'm always like, how many times have I read these stories? How many times have I edited them? How many times have we proofread them? And then to hear it all again, I hear it all again. Um, it just brings me to a place of just wow. Like I'm so inspired, by your journey and you embody radical self-acceptance. which is one of the things that I love about this project is that it's open to very like broad interpretation in terms of everybody's stories and how they've come to accept themselves in some way. And also not to just be like black and white about it, like, okay, you've accepted yourself now and now you have no more bad days. Like I don't think that that's possible. It's the human experience. Um, so what has it been like to write about this in such an open and public forum?
Um, Honestly, it was scary,
Mm-hmm.
because even though I came out to myself and my immediate family and a few close friends back in 2018, I still basically stayed in the closet
Yeah.
since then until this past. And even served on staff at a church.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That was not affirming.
that was not affirming, no. It was, I will say, it was, gosh, maybe I shouldn't say this. It was the least dysfunctional evangelical church I've ever been involved.
Well, there's something.
The pastor is wonderful, and he's not affirming, but he's very kind and very open-minded and not a judgmental hellfire and brimstone kind of
Yeah.
creature or human
Yeah.
being. He's very compassionate, you know. Um, but at the same time, I knew that like if I were to stand up at a church on Sunday morning and announce from the pulpit like, "Hey, by the way, I'm bi,"
Mm-hmm.
no,
Yeah. Okay.
would not have ended well. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
So like I kind of started coming out of the closet, and then when this job opportunity came up, that I really felt like, oh, feel like I'm really called to be here. And I'm not saying I wasn't, but it was overall it was a good experience in a
Uh-huh.
lot of ways. Um, but I felt like I had to dive back into the closet and
Yeah.
not really be fully myself. And for a lot of reasons, that wasn't why I left the job. There were other reasons, that just personal medical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no scandal here, like, oh, Kim decided to quit her church job. Now she's bi. No, it's not that. It's not that though. I've always been bi. Just didn't talk about it.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, coming out and talking about it has been really scary.
Uh-huh.
And writing about it, because I'm like, okay, I'm putting this out there for all the world to read,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's gonna know my story now. They're going to know that number one, I suffer from a mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
which is hugely stigmatized. And all my religious friends, evangelicals, Catholics, they're all going to know that I'm bi, you
Yeah.
know, and queer. I haven't really touched on that, but there, I experienced some early struggles with my gender identity, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that's kind of. I've never been a super girly girl. Like I clean up okay for interviews, but I'm just a casual person that
Yeah.
But anyhow, but yeah, I'm just putting it all out there was
Mm-hmm.
scary. And then the other thing that I know because you were editing my story was trying to narrow down which avenue of my childhood experiences
Yeah.
and adult experiences am I going to focus on?
Mm.
Because there were all kinds of things I could have written about.
Right.
I could have written about um, I could have written an entire chapter on bad experiences and misdiagnosis and abuse with the mental health industry,
Yeah.
um, instead of just a paragraph or two.
Right.
They could
Which is
have.
always the struggle with memoir, right? Because
Uh-huh.
memoir is just a slice, and you have to just pick one part to write about. And then this is why people write multiple memoirs
Uh-huh.
or contribute multiple chapters to anthologies, because we have so many, for those of us who write and experience the world through this practice and this medium, we have so many stories to
Yeah.
share. And that's what I love about these projects, right? Is that it's not autobiographical. So there are so many more opportunities that you can have to now write about the next thing. Because we want to know.
Right.
If you would do us the generosity of sharing it with us, yes. So would you do it again?
I think I would.
Yeah.
I
What
think I
has
would.
the feedback been? Like, what has the response been for you?
You know, I've had some overwhelmingly positive feedback
Yeah.
that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting some huge blowback,
Okay.
especially my religious
Yep.
members of my family and friends, that sort of thing. Oddly enough, I've gotten pretty much silence from that corner of my life, and I'm like, I suppose that's better than being lambasted. That's cool. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like,
Sometimes silence speaks louder than words, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
that's,
got you.
it is what it is.
It
But
is what it is.
I've found I've found a group of affirming and supportive people that I didn't even really know were there until I started reaching out and sharing, this is what I wrote about, and would you buy the book, and that kind of thing. And so I've gotten some very positive
Awesome.
feedback. Kind of a funny side note, when I first um, started on this writing journey, I created 3 social media accounts. Okay. I've got Kim Osburn blog on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram and Facebook. I've got Evolving Pursuit 2023, which is where I focus on deconstruction and LGBTQ
Mm-hmm.
issues and that sort of thing. And then I've got My Life with OCD 2023, where I've focused on having OCD.
Mm-hmm.
And in my compartmentalized mind, I'm thinking, well, not everybody with OCD is gonna want to hear about deconstruction, or you know, and
Mm-hmm.
not everybody deconstructing or LGBTQ is gonna want to hear about my OCD. And so I
Mm-hmm.
compartmentalized it, and sometimes I think, okay, maybe I should not have. But I also kind of did that to test the waters and see what kinds of support were out there, not just for the book, not just for the chapter, but for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you recommended to me early on in this writing process was that I reach out and start to build a support group, find a support group of like-minded. And I mean, as much as you can find a support group on social media,
Yeah.
I've found that. I've found not just an audience, but I've found other authors and other
Amazing.
influencers that have inspired me, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
have
I love that.
so
And
it's
I
been
think
good.
that's like part of the the mission and the objective of this project is to create community, and I think we've certainly built that, in our little WhatsApp group and cheering each other on in social media and whatnot. And so, healing, I don't believe healing can be done in isolation. And so we write so we can move to that next layer of healing, I think, and offer ourselves and those that we connect with another opportunity for transformation. And so we need people. We need people in order to like part of the healing process and taking back our story is to be seen. Are you there? Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know
All of
what
a
happened.
sudden something happened and you weren't there anymore.
I said
um,
to be
but
seen, then I couldn't see you
yes,
anymore.
we need to be seen. And I think that I purposely, very intentionally placed your chapter as the last chapter in the book because the ending text where you have reworked and re-lyricized, if that's a word, the song Just As I Am. For anybody who grew up evangelical, that Billy Graham televangelist call to the altar song. I can conjure that up in my sleep probably. And then you rewrote those lyrics, and I just felt like it was such a mic drop and a tribute to the entire book and every single woman that was a part of this, because we've all come into this space of accepting ourselves just as we are. um and that's what the whole point is to try to inspire other women to consider doing the same thing. Because it's freedom. And I'm just so appreciative that you were brave enough to trust me and to bring your story out in this way.
Thank you. I'm
So,
really grateful for the opportunity.
for anybody who wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
Like I said, on Instagram or Facebook at Kim Osburn blog, or My Life with OCD 2023, or Evolving Pursuit 2023.
Got it. Awesome. Kim, I am always inspired by you. Thank you so much for your courage, and thanks for coming on for this conversation today.